Something which has been on my mind lately is how war has been portrayed in music throughout the centuries, and what this can tell us about the history of these two things, which otherwise seem so completely unrelatable to one another. What you just heard me play was an instrumental setting of Clément Janequin's song La Guerre, which translates to The Battle. It describes an actual event in history, the Battle of Marignano, in which French King Francis I, together with the Venetian state, defeated the old Swiss Confederacy, who were defending the city of Milano. History offers us several perspectives on this event. The song by Janequin, of course, represents the French point of view. The glorious French king and his valiant knights strike down their foes with strength and courage. The Swiss perspective is quite different. Former mercenary Urs Graf documented his memory of the battle with this drawing. The recently rediscovered woodcut you saw up until now shows yet another perspective. It was created by a Venetian artist. This connects the story to Marco dall'Aquila, whom I introduced throughout the last videos and who made the lute arrangement of Janequin's song. As vocal music in 4, 5 or more voices reigned supreme during the 16th century, a common thing for musicians to do was to arrange popular songs for their instruments, a process called intabulation. This may sound like a fancy term, but it's actually something quite common today as well. The Swiss defeat at Marignano was a key point in European history, and Clément Janequin's song La Guerre turned into somewhat of a blueprint for an entire new genre of music, the Battaglia, or musical battle painting. You may remember one such Battaglia from last week's episode, you know, the one with the devil's son-in-law. The lute intabulation by Marco dall'Aquila seems to have been visionary here, as most battaglias that followed were written for instruments, not voices. My theory is that this has to do with a profound shift in how war was fought, and strikingly, this shift happened right there, in Marignano, where modern artillery was used on a battlefield for the first time in history. On this day, the martial hierarchy of the Middle Ages, with its knights and castles, was suddenly invalidated. Battle increasingly wasn't about humans fighting other humans anymore, but instead humans fighting machines, instruments of war. A number of devices still connect the instrumental battaglia of the 17th century with Janequin's La Guerre. Most prominently there is onomatopoeia, the sound painting of trumpet calls, drum rolls, battle cries, or cannon blasts with musical instruments, or in Janequin's case, the human voice. Furthermore, battaglia pieces are often highly virtuosic, with the performer's skill representing prowess in battle, and the constant back and forth between complex and simple rhythmical structures rendering the chaos and confusion on the battlefield contrasted with the order of a martial regiment. In addition to this, the battaglia makes use of musical motifs, such as specific trumpet calls or popular tunes, to shape a narrative. In Falconieri's case, there is this soldier's song, well known back then, the Girometta. Keep this one in mind for later. Despite all those various expressive devices, the way in which battaglia compositions from Janequin to Falconieri depict war still seems somewhat incomplete to us modern listeners. All this fixation on trumpets and drums and glorious men in colorful uniforms seems childish, as if war was some kind of sport. Though perhaps our team sport tradition, which is all about joint efforts, determination and identity after all, still carries an aspect of battle that seemingly was still present in Janequin's day, but faded as war increasingly became a domain of machines, not humans. War changed, and with it the aspects that strike us most about it. This following Battaglia, made by one of the most outstanding instrumentalists of the 20th century, portrays what the mechanization of war eventually culminated into. With an instrument that is half machine itself, the electric guitar, Jimi Hendrix performs Machine Gun. The horror of war was, of course, not foreign to previous centuries. Pictures like the one by Urs Graf document war as the humanitarian catastrophe that it is. Comparing Machine Gun to La Guerre reveals how the experience of battle and with it the general perception changed. The alienation and futility, the prospect of dying to an explosion in some hole for causes unknown. Hendrix captures this sense of apocalypse which defines war's image today and makes those early historical accounts of it feel so difficult to relate to. And he does so using age-old devices, sound painting, virtuosity, contrasting order with chaos. There is another influential musician and author of a Battaglia who was, just as Jimi Hendrix, fortunate enough to never actually have spent a day on the battlefield, though while James Hendrix had been drafted to fight in the Second World War as infantry, the famous Giovanni Girolamo Kapsperger was the son of a high-ranking colonel, which enabled him to receive an expensive education in military matters as well as music. He eventually chose not to follow in his father's footsteps, became a musician and would eventually rise up the ranks to become personal lutenist to the family of Maffeo Barberini, who was elected Pope in 1623. So here is a little excerpt from a concert in which I played the role of Kapsperger, presenting a Battaglia to the Pope's nephew, Francesco Barberini.
Solo 3.000 tedeschi contro 18.000 turchi?
A mio padre avanti sufficienti disse ai suoi soldati: non considerate il numero, per la vittoria si deve pregare Dio. Ecco, le canzoni dei soldati. Torna, torna tu, voi siamo i poveri turchi, si mancate, si mancate, si mancate, si mancate, caro fratello, si mancate, sì.
This was only a short excerpt, of course. If you'd like to see the rest of the video, I put a link in the description below. For more, you could also have a look on my YouTube channel, which is called Memo, a show about music, art, history, and the lute, with new episodes every Friday. Next week, I'll be presenting a little more about this kind of thing. If you wouldn't want to miss that, you could subscribe right here on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. The links are down there. And if you have a question, don't hesitate to post a comment. I'll try and answer it in the upcoming episode. Until then,